Welcome to the People Powered Community Podcast, where we dive into the inspiring stories of go-to-market professionals who have leveraged their skills to create strong and lasting connections within their community. Get ready to be inspired and learn how you too can harness your business superpower for good.
Hello, and welcome to the People Powered Community Podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Greenwood, CEO and founder of Chief Evangelist Consulting, and I'm very happy to be joined today with the customer growth expert of Scale Your Sales, Janice Gordon. Welcome, Janice.
Oh, it's lovely to be here.
I'm so, this is such a tide turning moment for me. So if you all have ever seen my podcast journey, Phobia, Janice was one of the first people that ever asked me to be on a podcast. And I think I said yes, and then maybe canceled. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll sign up. And then I didn't do that for 18 months and finally said yes. And she was such a great host that she's now empowered me. And I have my own podcast. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. It's, I highly respect you for challenging your own fears, working through that, and also kind of experimenting with others and then thinking, I can really do this. So much so you're doing it for yourself. Go you. Well done.
Oh my goodness. It's just it's mind blowing, the change that has happened since last November. Yeah. So I appreciate you, and I give you extra shout out for being part of my journey on that. And I'm really honored to have you on, because I know you're on plenty of podcasts, but you're an amazing host. So having you here with me is pretty amazing. So let's talk about, today we're going to talk about at length what your superpower is and how that relates to, what you're doing now, how you think about and participate in community. But I guess first, tell us who you are, what you're doing now, and a little bit about how you got there.
So the customer growth expert, I suppose one of my unique propositions is I started working in financial services sales, and I really understood from my second experience of working in customer experience that the whole sales industry's got it wrong. How arrogant is that? But it's true, and the way that things are moving, it's kind of proving me correct. Way back in 2005, when I thought, we're looking at it from the wrong perspective. And what I mean by this is that when I work with the customer experience, having had all of those years of sales experience, I really understood that customers are the best creators and innovators. They're the ones with all the answers. They really know what they want and what they're talking about. And what I knew from my sales experience is we often ask questions because we want the customer to go on our journey rather than us go on their journey. So, when we're talking about discovery, it's actually helping customers to see what they want is our product. That's not correct. That's not the right, because actually the customer really knows what they want, and they're out trying to find the best fit for what their problem and solution is. So I kind of thought we're looking at it from the wrong perspective. So this is how over the years Scale Your Sales has grown up and been customer focused and talking to organizations about the importance to future-proof your organization and the way that you sell by actually not selling at all, but by actually understanding what your buyers want and being very much buyer and customer focused. So if you understand what the outcome that the customer wants to achieve, you retrofit that into your process. So you're enabling buyers to buy. So that's kind of always been over a period of time where my perspective has come from. So, I'm an author of two books. I have Scale Your Sales podcast. I have Scale, the sales specific assessment tool that helps top performing sales teams and businesses to grow. And then the Scale Your Sales framework. So if I kind of take a step back from that, I've always been in business, an entrepreneur. I've always understood how businesses work from, in the 80s, selling textile designs in America and literally picking up the phone and going to speak to people. So I've had a long history of sales experience, and then moving into customer experience, then moving more into kind of entrepreneurship. So that's really been my journey and how my perspective around the sales industry has changed.
I love it. And I take back one thing you said, and it kind of goes back to our pre-chat, which was, really thinking about what the customer has in mind and what they want. Because, in this case, you are my customer. And, I was going over, she's like, well, and you're like, I don't know exactly what I'm going to say. I'm like, that's great. That's great. This is yours. This is your customer journey. So, kind of a very similar mindset to this podcast. And that is 100% the way I think about things. I mean, I'm a very much a relationship seller, the customer first, having a point of view on the way you're going to treat your customer from the moment they touch your website, from the moment they interact is like so important to the way I look at business. So I don't think we could agree, any more on that. And then I'll just say, one of my first sales jobs was telemarketing. Trying to sell people American Express cards. And at that point, they still gave you their social security number. So like, if we're going to go way back in the time machine, we can go way back in the sales time machine for sure. So, well, I want to add one other thing. International speaker. Wouldn't that be correct too?
Oh, absolutely. I've got a trip to Lithuania coming up. I'm really excited about that. It's speaking in front of 1,200 people. Absolutely terrified, but I'm going to do it anyway. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to speak to all of these sales managers and leaders. And Lithuania is such a beautiful, I've never been to the Baltic states. So I'm looking forward to spending some days traveling around. So yeah, certainly international speaker. Last year I did work in America. And so yeah, absolutely love it.
Awesome. We're going to cross our fingers for us doing a little bit of something in America together too. But we're not going to talk about it yet.
No.
So let's talk a little bit about your superpower. I have my take on what I think your superpower is based on, our interactions and how you show up on social. But let's hear from you. What's your superpower?
Do you know, when you first asked me about this, I said, I can fly. But actually, I suppose it's really helping others to fly. And the way that I do that is you're the real connector. But I make connections in the way that if I'm working on a consultancy basis or mentoring, people often say to me, no one's ever asked me that. And I love it. I love it when I've got to that point, because people are really willing to push their boundaries once they come up with one. But often we're too scared to actually come up to our own boundaries. We tend to play safe. And then we're not really growing when that happens. So if I'm able to ask a question based on what someone has said to me, and they say, well, no one's ever asked me that. And our brains are incredible. Our brains, when there's a gap, when you ask your brain a question at night, often by the morning, it's doing all of this chunking of data and experience and through the memory banks. And it's fantastic. We should do that more often. By the morning, you've got the answer. So when someone says to you something where you think, oh, that's interesting, no one's ever asked me that, that means your brain is automatically going to try and find the answer to it. So you have to challenge yourself. So in making connections, either that's something where I push back to others and they say, no one's ever asked me that, and then we'll have a discussion around that. Or it may be if I'm kind of speaking or Q&A or presenting, sometimes things I very much react to in the moment, being present. And it may be from research that I've done, from the conversations that I've had, from something that's topical. I don't always know what I'm going to say. Like, I don't know what's coming out of my mouth now. I don't always plan it, but sometimes absolute gold comes out. And I think, where on earth did that? I'm impressed with myself. And it's because I'm making all of these seemingly unrelated connections and bring it into something. So when it comes out, it is really powerful. And it may be helping people make the connections themselves, or answering a question from someone in an audience. And I think, wow, that's really good. Well, how did you come up with that? That's what I'm thinking in my head. And they think, oh my God, that's brilliant. That's amazing, you know. But actually, all I've done is actively listen to them, the way that they've posed the question, the environment they're in. What sparked that question was something I may have said before. So trying to connect those two things. And then also, you know, what's going on in the environment, or some research that I can bring in there. So I'm very good in the moment making connections and helping other people to make the connections. So it enables them to push their boundaries, think outside of the box, and do more than they ever thought possible, simply because I'm getting them to listen to their own voice, listen to their own words, listen to the way they have formed that sentence. There's reasons why we use certain words to describe certain situations. And people out there must test this. When you talk, are you actually listening to yourself? More often than not, you cannot repeat 2 sentences what you've said. And it's only 2 sentences ago. You can't, it's gone. Once it's out, it's gone. It's because we're not actually listening to what we're saying ourselves. And that's why it's often good to record your words, record what you said, listen back, and then you find your own gold in the words that you've used when you're really actively listening to yourself. Your body knows, you know, but we often don't listen to it.
Okay. There's so many knowledge bombs in that. I've never said this on a podcast before, but just the whole not listening to yourself. I really thought I couldn't remember just because I was old. And that my memory was fading. I'm like, what did I say? I have no idea. But that's amazing. You know, just thinking about, like, one, listening to yourself. What words did you choose? Why did you choose them? How was I feeling in that moment when I chose them? Because I do definitely know that there are words I choose when I'm feeling maybe less confident, things like that. The idea that you are, you know, bringing people close to that barrier, or that boundary that they have set to themselves, and then kind of open that up. And then what you're saying also is something very similar to what I talk about, which is, you know, and I don't consider active listening, but like when I'm on the phone with someone or the video, even phone too. And I think this is part of what goes into my superpower in connecting with people easily, is that I'm watching body language. I'm listening to tone of voice, head cocks, you know what I mean? There's just all kind of stuff, like, but mine is mostly visual cues. And what you just explained is not just the visual cues, but like the context. What was the connector between that question and what you had said? And oh my goodness, I'm making lots of notes after this call.
Excellent.
Oh my goodness. Well, that is amazing. How do you use that, like when you're in, like, speaking in front of a group?
So we're humans, we're quite lazy, really. If we can get someone else to think for us, we will. So we'll often ask a question of the person that's standing up in front of you, if I'm, you know, doing a masterclass or workshop, but actually, you think you know the answer. You might be testing me. There's different perspectives. And so I will often throw it back. And this is a technique when you don't know the answer. You throw it back to, you know, that's what consultants and, you know, speakers, presenters, trainers do all the time. Well, what do you think? But I'm not only what do you think, but why do you think what you think? So that's not, well, I think this. Okay, why? It's in the why you think what you may think that is really interesting and helps to open up the discussion with other people, because someone else may disagree with you, but they may agree with why you think that. So they're not going to challenge you. Often we challenge one another when you talked about working in a group of people. I want to bring around consensus. It's okay to not agree with the other person. consensus is about understanding the core values of the organization or what you're trying to achieve. This is why the why is really important, because we can all agree with the whys, and we can more easily gain consensus without disagreeing, because we all agreeing to that common area. And we often will let go of polar positions. And that's why people disagree. So I will often throw it back, but I'll ask why you're thinking in that way.
That's okay. Awesome. I'm going to take that for any speaker tips for future. Well, let's talk a little bit about like how this superpower came to be. You probably just didn't wake up one day and like, I'm going to use all these skills. Like, when did you first notice it? And then what have you done to like actively like nurture it? I mean, obviously with your position, speaking and doing, you've had to, because that's a real amazing skill that you have. But how did you find out about this?
I used to be really shy, in my teens. I was, yeah.
Really?
I'm actually introverted. A lot of people don't know that because it's ta-da! But I can assure you, Leslie, I'm going to have to sit in a dark room facing the wall after this. No. It's interesting that my comfort zone was being shy and quiet and not really saying anything, but it's the shy people or the quiet people that are great observers. You will sit back in a group and you're really intently observing people. So you talked about the body language, the tone, the pauses, really important pauses tell you a lot. And so you're observing what people are really thinking. Then when you say something, all of a sudden, people think what you've just said is amazing. Here's this quiet person. How did they come up with that? Actually, all I've done is just observe the group and what their perspective is and really understand other people's points of view. So people used to think of me as quite knowledgeable. I don't know where that came from. But actually, all I'm doing, and I did it quite naturally. If you told me that I had a particular skill, then I wouldn't have been able to see it. I wouldn't know what you were talking about. I couldn't really identify it because often the things that we're amazing at are right in front of our nose and we can't see it ourselves because we do it naturally. But actually understanding how did that come about? Where did that come from? Well, it came from the fact that I was that quiet person in the corner. Part of the reason I was that quiet person in the corner is because a whole host of racism in school and you're best to, be invisible and quiet in the corner and all of that. So no one kind of targeted you, whether it was the, teachers or, the other students. But part of it was just me being a quieter person. I know that I was shy because I would know the answer to things in the classroom or in a conference or have a question. And my palms would sweat, my arms would sweat. I'd be having a nervous breakdown. I haven't even asked the question, but just thinking of structuring the question. And often I would be so anxious about it, I would miss the moment. And there might be someone else that answered, or it just didn't get answered. Mm-hmm. And so I had to force myself out. And the one thing that forced myself out of that, and I know this doesn't answer your question, but No,
I love it. Keep going.
The one thing that forced me out of that is because of the racism, that teachers would write me off and say, I'm not good at that, or I don't do this, and I can't do that. And, I was told when I was 15, I'm not intelligent enough to go on and do A-levels. And so it was kind of around that point at 15 that I realized that I've got to find my voice because I can't continue to allow other people to put me in a box that isn't my box. So I had to force myself to work through all that anxiety, sweating of hands and armpits and nervous energy and speak. And so it's when you start practicing doing that, then you don't have so much nervous energy and anxiety around it. But it was really compelling of why I had to force myself out of it. So now, fast forward, you cannot shut me up.
I love it.
I'm so opinionated. I've got something to say about everything. Well, that's all down to those teachers that tried to put me in my box that didn't have my name on it. And now I'm telling people, do not allow, whether it's parents, teachers, bosses, anybody, to decide what is good enough for you or what you should do. Be really careful about getting advice from people. And the reason for that is their advice is based on their perspective and their experience, which is historic. And your ambitions and thoughts are based on what you think you know about yourself and also what your aspirations are for the future. No one else is in your head. No one else sees it the way you do. So why are you taking advice from this old codger that has no experience of who you are? Why does that, even if it's your parents, they want to keep you safe? Why do we do that? You've just got to go for it and see what happens, you know? So that's where it came from, Leslie.
Well, I love that. I also add grit into your superpower, because when you're placed in that situation, you said, by darned, that's going to be me. No, that's not going to be me. And let me show you how. And you've nurtured that and grown that and, brought that to the forefront, which is now like a really large part of your life. And to go from the shy kid in the corner who had those introspective skills to now, as you put it, the loud person on the stage, but still with the introspective skills. That's great how you've mixed those two things together to create this recipe that is now Janice B Gordon, Scale Your Sales.
Yeah.
I'm curious how you integrate this superpower into how you think about and participate in community.
If I'm thinking of, let's say I come off stage and people may come up to me and ask me questions, and then I may bat it back to them to get clarification, ask them why. I will often, people feel the energy and my commitment to what I'm saying. When you look at my testimonials, a lot of them say, energized, when I came into the room, started speaking, the energy in the room lifted. And I remember, again, going back to my younger days, how people, although I was shy, I was committed. But then people, because of my color, read that as being aggressive, or over the top, But actually, I'm not apologizing for that. This is it. This is who I am. But now channeling that, it means that other people feel my commitment and my energy, and great, they take it and run with it. So as an example, it may be somebody is feeling doubtful about whether they can do something. And then I will maybe ask them some questions about, their goals or their skills or something like that. And out of that, they may tell me a story like I've told you about where that came from, why it's so important and all of that. And then also understanding all of the negative messages in our heads or the negative people around us, the naysayers. If they understand that they have no idea who we are or what's good for us, and they can just discount all of that, you're kind of free to fly after that, aren't you? It's like, if I told you what they said was rubbish, you wouldn't believe it. But if I actually explained the why what they said is rubbish, all of a sudden you think, yeah, that makes sense. How can I be taking advice from this idiot that isn't me? Now you can discount that. You're free to fly. You're free to be who you're meant to be. So it's really about telling, whether it's those antidotes or helping people to understand the basis of yours and other people's decision making, and knowing that that's absolutely right for you. Mm-hmm. And when you know it's right for you, you can make those decisions. Rather than there's nothing stopping you. You're suddenly, all of your energies are really focused on doing what you know you need to do. You know the reason why you're here. all I've done is, I suppose, is remove some of those barriers, made some of those connections for you. I don't need to do anything else. You're free to fly. You've always meant to fly. And I literally tell people that, this is why you're here. And they're thinking, yes, why have I got that idea? Why have I made all of those connections myself? Why is it that no one thinks in the way that I think? It's because you're meant to be here at this moment in time, ready to move forward, or that's why we're meant to connect. And thank you and goodbye. And, I wish you well on your success. And when you're looking down on me and you're in the stratosphere, just make sure, you pull a ladder down for me. I really genuinely wish you, achieve everything that you're more than capable of achieving. And I totally believe that.
I think I know you've done that, because I think you've done that with me when we first talked, and kind of released some of those, our conversation, released that doubting mind that I had. And honestly, I don't, like you said, I don't know that it was my doubting mind. It was other people's perception that was sitting on my shoulder, making me doubt myself. And so releasing that it's a process. Has been something I'm working on and working through. And like you said, going through barriers, even if I don't think I'm quite ready. I love what you said, that you were just going to say it. You, of course, know our friend Ravi Rajani. And on the podcast the other day, I've been writing down quotes, but he said, unapologetic self-expression. Yeah. And I think that is definitely something that you are embodying. And I love to see that you're embodying that and using your superpower to lift other people up. And while doing that, breaking down some barriers about the way people think about sales and the way they think about their customer, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like people. So it seems really easy to me. And I think the more you can lift other people up, you lift yourself up as well. There's always going to be negative people out there, but, my glass is always half full. And, it will always be half full, not half empty. And that's the way I choose to go through life. And in building community, you attract more people like yourself that are glass half full, that like the energy, that give you energy very quickly. It's important to really understand what your core values are. Who you are, what's the non-negotiables. In my book, Business Evolution, I've got a whole exercise that, people can go through to identify their core values. Once you understand that, then you make decisions based upon what's important to you, rather than where the group is taking you. And it's a lot easier for you to say no. I even get people to practice the no. And it's no. Smile on your face. There's never a comeback when you say a pleasant no. It's not unpleasant. It's quite nice. It's just no. End of story.
It's so uncomfortable.
And so it's not uncomfortable at all. People worry about no, but the more no's you can say, the more yeses that you're going to get, because you're removing all of the things that are going to weigh you down, that are not right for you, and that's not right for you, but you're afraid to upset other people. So learn to say no and understand what are the core values, what's important to you, so that you can move in the direction of where you're meant to go, where you're meant to use your own superpowers to change the world in your own way, based on what's important to you and what you're here to do.
I love that. And I think what you're saying too, another thing you said, part of it was attract and repel. And so you are you have an informal community, people that follow you, that listen to your podcast, that listen to you, and you're attracting the kind of people that, your values put out and the way that you think about the world. So I love that. Last thing on your superpower. So there's someone out there that's like, "Ooh, I was that shy child." And I also see all the things, and but I'm starting to kind of step out and say things. What would be something you would give them as a takeaway, or something they could do to hone that superpower that they could use further in the future?
I think it's important to be curious, and that's kind of breaking through your own barriers that you set up for yourself or that other people set up for you. So you've got to be curious, and when your brain is telling you can't or you shouldn't and all of that, then you need to reframe it and question, okay, well, why? Why can't I do that? You need to question your own monkey or, little voice in your head. Why do I think that's not possible? And again, remember, use your brain. Ask your brain the question, go to sleep, wake up, you've got the answer. It's like, of course I can do this in the morning. I'm going for it. But also understand your strength is your personality and understanding your perspective. And I talked about your core values. So really do understand what are your non-negotiables, what's most important to you, what are your core values, so you can stay on your path and not get deflected onto other people's path or the community, where the community might be taking you. So understanding your core values is really important. Do not be afraid to take a stance based on your core values, based on what's important to you. But you can only really take a stance if you know your core values. So I think it comes back to that. And then, please do go and fly.
Love it. Love it. Janice, this has been such a terrific episode. I love that it went in maybe some different areas than even you and I talked about. But that's what's made this awesome. So I really appreciate you taking your time to share your story and your superpower with our listeners. You can connect with Janice, of course, on LinkedIn. But where else can they find you, Janice?
Yes, please go to scaleyourselves.co.uk. You can access the podcast and my speaking website and Scale Your Sales and Scale. All of my products are on there. So it would be lovely. If you go to LinkedIn, make sure you said that you saw me here on Leslie Greenwood's podcast, because I love to know where people see me. And it would be great to get a mention and keep going with this wonderful podcast. Well done. You really enjoyed my time, Leslie. You're a star. I absolutely adore you. Thank you.
The feeling is so very mutual. Y'all can find all the information about Janice down in the show notes. Janice, thank you so much.
Take care.